Hey guys, and welcome back to Blaze TV. It's Kimberley and Stu Coles as always, and I guess for a little bit of a recap of the season just gone now that the dust has settled, it's Blaze head coach Danny Stewart. Danny, great to see you. It hasn't really been that long, but already it feels like it's been a little while. How you been keeping?
I've been keeping well. Yeah, I think you're right. It's although it hasn't been long, it seems like ages ago that we obviously lost to Belfast there. But no, I've just been keeping busy. Obviously, cleaning up the season and getting everything done in terms of logistics of getting guys home and like I said, with everything else. And obviously, Keno and Ethan have been a big help with that stuff. Leading the charge in those areas, so to speak. So, and then obviously just already attention turned to next season and looking to build the roster for next season.
Yep, and I guess the work actually begins kind of some way into the previous campaign, right?
Yeah, no, you do. It's a fine balance at times because you don't want to distract guys too much. Catching them a few weeks before the season and guys start talking to each other and start wondering when the conversation for them is going to come and stuff like that. So I've always been a big believer on trying your best to get to the end of the season and just kind of giving guys time. I think certainly after this past season, I think some time away to decompress a little bit, both for the coaching staff, the organization, and the players themselves, I think equally is important for both parties. So it certainly, you start looking at things before the season ends, but you don't get into kind of full recruiting mode until that season's done. At least that's what we do anyway.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. And speaking of preparations for the new season, last summer, if we rewind, kind of 10, 11 months, that must have been a whirlwind. It must have been a horrible place to be as a coach because 12 months prior to that, you're preparing for a season that never happened. You must have had so much going through your head and so much of, is the season going to happen again? Or are we going to have this problem with the pandemic? It must have affected you so much. What was it like 12 months ago?
Yeah, no, it was difficult, as I'm sure it was for most of the other coaches in the league. I think, just speaking about us, we obviously had the 1920 season come to an end, abruptly there, and we had a great group that season, and we managed to re-sign, many key parts to that group, and we lost a few, but and then obviously with the season canceled, you lost players like Drew Schistel and Chris Polkamp that had been signed back for the next season, and that COVID year kind of made them consider life after hockey, and they ended up pursuing those things. So through that, we lost some additional key spots, and we managed to retain a good amount of our core. But you lose the likes of Drew Schistel and Justin Hash and the Polkamp brothers and Charlie Corcoran and Andrew Johnson. I mean, those were some really good players for us, and to kind of go out and try to replace those guys in a I guess a lighter market. A lot of uncertainty from players in terms of how it was in the UK, if the season was going to go, if it was not going to go. Some guys were less willing to travel, wanted to maybe stay closer to home. I think COVID really kind of, as we mentioned earlier, pushed some guys towards retirement, and you've seen a lot of that. So yeah, it was certainly a lot tighter market, and and some positions more specifically were a lot tougher to fill.
Yeah, no, it seems like one of those was the center position, which after losing Matthew Thompson really early on in the season became a real area of concern for you.
Yeah, we had signed Thompson early. I think it was around end of June, early July, and we had continued looking for another top six center, which we didn't feel at the time that we filled. And then certainly when Tomo went down, it was a big loss. I think it was the one position that we really couldn't afford to lose, and we battled. We tried almost on a weekly basis to fill and bring in another top 6 center. But we couldn't. There was many teams across Europe looking for centermen that couldn't fill those positions as well. Leagues higher than us that couldn't find guys, and it was what it was. I mean, we did our best. We had some decent money available to try and fill that position because we knew the importance of it, and we just could not find a guy. And then but we had some guys step up and play some good hockey for us. Like Penny ended up playing a lot bigger role. And did a good job for us. V played a lot more up the middle than we had anticipated. We had Alec Marsh, who hadn't played, center for a very long time, that filled in when necessary and did a good job. We even had Curry through the middle for parts of the season to generate more offense and a little bit more speed through the middle. So it was kind of an all hands on deck, and at times it worked, and at times I think maybe we were certainly in the circle and face-offs we highlighted that, and just the position. It's a position that certainly when you talk about those top 6 roles, you want guys that are naturally in those spots. So it was a bit of a grind, but fair play to the guys that step up and did their best.
And the rules in terms of how many players you can ice per game changed as well coming into the season. What impact did that have on us at all?
Do you mean the roster size?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I didn't necessarily impact us too much. I think other than the very first year that I came into coach, I don't think we've rolled 4 full lines. We felt that year, it was, a different year that year, but we felt that year that maybe with our budget, we spread it a little bit thin, trying to get those 4 lines. And that's not to say we won't try to make that work this season, but I don't think it really affected us that much. I think we're, maybe affected the bigger clubs a little bit more that like to roll the 4 lines, and, they weren't able to do that.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, what we were all saying was going to be the case throughout the year. It probably affects the Belfast, the Cardiffs, the Nottinghams a little bit more than us.
But in saying that, you see the success Belfast had this year, and they're probably the one team that said it didn't affect them, and everyone else will say it did. So
yeah, that's hindsight's a wonderful thing. That's very true. Stu.
Yeah, I mean, sticking on the theme of the season, really. Prior to the start of the season, we always knew there'd be disruption at some point. Like, everybody just kind of expected it. But did you expect the season to be as disrupted as it was? 2 COVID shutdowns, ice plant, couple of, a big injury and a departure. I mean, how damaging was that sort of disruption to the team?
Yeah, I certainly didn't suspect that it would be as much. We had that grueling stretch there in October, November with the suspensions as well, where it seemed like we were, I think, 10 days. I think there was about 5 suspensions, and it was one of those seasons. And, I've continually said this time and time again, and I actually think all said and done, with all those disruptions, I think right after the second COVID outbreak, we had a norovirus outbreak as well. And, I won't get too far into that without being too gory with the details. But, I thought we handled it well, and I thought we came through it, generally okay. So really, and I've said it again, where I think we really let ourselves down was in those last several weeks where we were a little bit up and down. Now, don't get me wrong, with 23 games, I think it was, in 50 games, you're probably going to see some inconsistencies, but it was the extremity of the inconsistencies. We were lose 5, win 5. And then the big ones for me were the 2 games down the stretch, Guildford and Nottingham. We were in Guildford. We had a 2-goal lead there in the 3rd period, and we switched off for 5-6 minutes and cost us that hockey game. And then we did the exact same thing against Nottingham at home the very next night. And, you flip those 2 games over. And I know everyone can look back, hindsight, blah, blah, blah. But those 2 games specifically for me, where we were at in the season, the ability to, knock a team down that was below us, Guildford at the time, I think, to a point where it would have been very tough for them to catch us. and also, knock on Nottingham's door in that game as well. And, that's essentially was the difference between fourth, fifth, or eighth, and unfortunately blowing those two games and ending up eighth, and you have to play the Belfast Giants.
And you're absolutely right. There was a lot of parity across the league this year. That gap from fourth to eighth was, a matter of a couple of games here or there. Do you think that was like as we mentioned before, the roster rules, or the clubs are sort of becoming closer together and the league's evolving? What's the sort of the reason why we maybe got more parity this year than previous years?
I mean, I think the parity's been better over the last several years. I think for the first time in a few years, you've seen those top 2, 3 pull away a little bit earlier than they have done before. And you know what? When those teams get it right, money doesn't guarantee everything. But when you do get it right, you see what happens this year, and it's not just money. I'm not that, a couple of the bigger clubs, it's not just about money. They do things very well. They've built good cultures, good facilities, and there's more to it than just what they spend. But I think from this year, let's say from 3 or 4 down to 10th place. I mean, I think what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot of teams, and obviously it's going to change this year. There's been a little bit of movement amongst the coaching staffs and stuff like that. But I think you're seeing teams with coaches that have been around for several years. They got a good gauge on the league. Recruiting's been better. I've said this before as well. I thought the goaltending in our league this year was possibly the best it's ever been, from top to bottom. I mean, you look at the Fife Flyers in last place. Shane Owen was phenomenal. Manchester, 2 really good goalies, obviously Mott, every team right through Starrett, Lindskog, Caruth, Bescarani. I mean, there wasn't a weak goalie in the league this year. And I think there's no easy nights either. There's no more, and, without disrespecting teams of the past, there's no, Edinburgh Capitals with, shortened rosters by the end of the year and things like that, where you're going in almost a certain 2 points, and you got to battle for every 2 points, and, people can say what they want, but I thought the Fife Flyers were a better hockey club than maybe the standings showed as well this year. And it's a battle every week. So I think that's only good for the league, only good for the fans. And you know what, your team doesn't get those easy points anymore, but it's definitely more competitive.
You mentioned as well that there was some ups and downs, and perhaps towards the end of the season, those couple of games that you pointed out, the Guildford game and the Nottingham, just came at absolutely the wrong time for those sort of things. Every team will have slumps during a season. Everyone will go through their ups and downs. Do you think, the number of games that the club had played up until that point, that it was starting to have a factor with all that disruption? It was just catching up with the guys towards the end of the season?
I think there might have been a little bit of that. And you know what, us coaches, we're not supposed to have excuses, right? But I think certainly a little bit of fatigue set in. We had that big stretch where, again, I think it was November, where I think we only played 3 games in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks with the plant failure and stuff. And obviously through that, we had a lot of backed up games, and we obviously had to fit those in towards the end of the year. But we ended up bringing Chalker and Brownie in as extra bodies, and was massive for us down the stretch. Taking away minutes, Chalker certainly helped us in the circle and through the middle, and Brownie, when he played, brought some speed and energy and took minutes off guys. So, but yeah, I think it caught up to guys. Maybe for me, more mentally at times than physically. I think with the amount of stops and starts that we had, there was a stretch there where we were training in Solihull for 3 weeks, and just a lot of things, and a lot of uncertainty and suspensions, a lot of unexplained kind of decisions and non-decisions through that stretch. And, a lot of answers that I couldn't really give to the players. just a lot of things. But yeah, no, I think it was more mental. I think it was more mental than it was physical for a lot of our guys. And I think a good telltale for me was most years after the season, guys will, stick around for a little bit or maybe go traveling and so forth. But this year, first week, I'd say 90% of our roster was back home. And I think it was just one of those years where guys just wanted to get back home and just decompress and spend time with family and switch off.
Yeah, and with that all in mind, you can't blame them, right? There's been a lot going on.
Yeah.
And maybe sort of on reflection, looking back, when you're sort of sat penciling in the roster, this time last year, with recruitment, you never know quite what you're going to get. You've got an idea, but there's always some ups and downs. Were there any surprises on in the team that actually turned up and played for the Blaze this year from where you were sort of thinking August, September time?
In terms of individual players?
Yeah. Or as a team makeup in general?
I wouldn't say massive surprises. We knew when we put the roster together that we were taking chances on a couple guys. Obviously, guys like Bloodoff's not a guy you took a chance on, but I think certainly after the last year and a half, you still, obviously Bloods wasn't able to play in the previous season. Dane Gibson, didn't play in the previous season and hadn't played pro before. So, we took a chance on a couple of those guys, and, Alec Marsh hadn't had a lot of experience and brought him as well. And you know what, for the most part, they performed well and, exceeded our expectations. I think as a group, we knew at the start of the, Keno and I sat down and we knew at the start of the year that there was probably a couple holes that we still had when we started the season. And we tried our best to fill that. We knew we were going to be a little bit short on offense. We brought Kivalati in, who certainly helped with that. But the big thing for us was the pace and the offense through the middle. And that's what we really missed. We don't like to compare teams, but in the past we've generally had some strength up the middle and some pace, and we lacked that a little bit this year, and we knew that going in. So, we tried to manage that as best as we could. I think probably in my time here, you've probably seen more different line combinations than in the past, where I'm maybe the type of coach that likes to stick by guys and let them work their way through kinks rather than just continually changing it up. But I think this year with trying to generate offense and add some speed through the middle, we had some different combinations. So but in terms of surprises, I don't think there was any huge surprises. What we got out of guys, we generally felt that that's what we had expected. Obviously Halby coming in was a great signing for us. I could go right down the, Ratsy did a good job. We were unsure about Ratsy as well. He played the previous season in France and played a little bit of forward. He was kind of a swing guy for them, and came in and was really solid for us at the back. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, other guys. Penny came in, and again, after some time off, obviously COVID year, he stayed at McGill and missed the season. So he was another guy that had to get back up to speed. And, obviously the fans voted him forward of the year. He was a guy that was, heavy for us. He was good in the middle, good in face-offs, and scored, 15 plus goals in the league. So really, really good production from him as well.
And we don't try and necessarily single out players, but one guy, the old guy that we keep referring to, Yanni Larkinen, 40 years old, 1,000+ games, but yet still leads the team in scoring. It's some achievement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yanni's a special passer. We know that's his strength. He sees the game, he sees the ice, differently than most players. And, again, the production was there. I think probably at times that down the stretch there, 23 games in 50 days, I think maybe caught up to them. But and as it did everyone, I mean, we had young guys who caught up to as well. But I think for the most part, we got a lot out of Yanni this year.
And sort of looking at all together as like a whole sort of one's reflection, what's your sort of overall assessment? Challenge Cup quarterfinals, about as close as you can get to the playoff semi-finals without actually getting there. 8th in the league. Where does that sort of sit in your head?
We want to do better. We want to be better. And it's fine lines. It's fine lines, and I could sit here and say, we're 4 points behind fourth. One, you flip a game, switch it the other way, we're maybe fourth place, right? And if we're fourth place and we're Challenge Cup quarterfinal, and are you happy with that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're we certainly are a team that we want to challenge that top half of the table, and we want to challenge for a trophy. We don't want to just be in the mix. And the Challenge Cup, we got through this year, but it doesn't necessarily mean we played good hockey. In saying that, I will defend our guys. We came in. I think we had 2 days prep. We played an exhibition game against Manchester, and then we had another 2 days on the ice, and we jumped right into Challenge Cup games against Guildford. And I might be wrong, but as far as I was told, I think they had about a week and a half together as a team with training and stuff like that. Maybe a step ahead of us at that point, and certainly they ended up being our bogey team as well this year, right? We just couldn't figure them out. We did a couple times, but not enough. And but no, I didn't leave this season. I left this season feeling better about their group, but how they picked themselves back up and played against Belfast. And it wasn't like we went and just hung on against Belfast and, relied on Mater to keep us in and got outshot by 25, 30 shots. Like, I felt on the Saturday, we were by far the better team. I think we had 3 breakaways that night. We played as good a hockey game as we had all year. And then to follow it up in Belfast, where we hadn't played good hockey this season, large in part of how much quality Belfast has. And again, played about as good as we possibly could and had them on the ropes there, a game of inches, that puck 1 inch to the right, 1 inch to the left, on Conway's move, and it hits Mater's pad. Instead, it kind of slides under the arc of the pad there and gives them another lifeline. So, it left me feeling better about this season. And I think the players knowing that they gave it their all. And that's one thing we stress going in the weekend. Like, we didn't want to leave this weekend with any regrets. And I certainly think they can do that. But in saying that, obviously, I'm sure a lot of the players will agree with me in saying that, it could have been better.
Ed.
Yeah, I was going to say the Conway move and the Belfast goal on Sunday in regulation off a skate blade. It really is a game of inches that could have gone anywhere. Just happened to balloon up into the top of the net there. But thinking ahead, Danny, so U Sports and NCAA have become a staple, I think, for most clubs to recruit from. I assume again it will be this year. Do you feel like you're gonna I don't know, maybe try and tap up some guys with a little more pro experience? That might have been something that would have helped down the stretch, or am I reaching?
No. I'll tell you if you're reaching, Ed. But no, I certainly think at times we lacked a little maturity, maybe. Reading games, situational type stuff, and playing with leads and playing the right way and shutting games down. And sometimes that comes through maturity and leadership. And I think the NCAA and U Sports I don't think it's underrated anymore. It was 3-4 years ago, but I think even when we signed Chalk and Brown, maybe there was still a few bit of uncertainty amongst the fan base a little bit and say, what are we doing? But we've seen the quality of Chalker and Brownie when they got in. I think it'll be kind of needs as well. We're still in discussions with players from last year's team and guys that we've targeted, and you're always going to get a few surprises. Guys maybe decide to retire unexpectedly or look to move on, whether it's another club or another league, different experiences. So once we get a better indication, there's a few spots we know right now that we need to fill, and we're being aggressive with that. And then obviously waiting on a few guys' decisions, and then we'll have a clearer picture on where we need to fill. And if the right players come along, whether they're NCAA U sports or experience, then it's something we'll look at. But you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, too much one way or the other, and say, well, we're going to go young and go too young, or we need more experience and then go too old. So I think it's really filling those needs and then seeing what the best players are on the market.
I understand. And the youth sports thing as well, to kind of come back to that, we've talked about being able to add Connor Chalk and Braden Brown mid-season. Do you foresee that being something we'll be able to do again? Because I know this year was very special in terms of scheduling. We extended the year by a week or two. Their season ended slightly earlier than normal, if I recall correctly. Will that be circumstances that we see again, or was it pretty much a one-time thing?
Well, I think this year maybe what made it a little bit easier. Now, not in all cases, but a lot of the youth sports and NCAA players played that extra year, and obviously, they were granted that extra year of playing, and a lot of them had finished their undergraduate by the time their seasons had ended. So they had that freedom to go. Chalker wasn't one of them, or neither was Brown. They were both still studying when they came here, and not all universities are going to be supportive in that and letting their players just go, or their students, more importantly, go and kind of finish off their course or their last exams online. So credit to the University of Regina and also Trinity Western there for allowing those guys to do that and combine their studies with playing pro hockey. So, but I definitely think it's always looked at as an option. I think obviously the deadline being extended this year helped a lot till March. Whether that'll stay in place next year, I'm not sure, but that helped as well. And it was huge for us. I don't know if we would have got through that stretch without adding those two extra bodies, because it was so many games in such a short period of time. And I think definitely it'll be something that teams look to do.
One of your key objectives, if I remember rightly from speaking a few years in a row now, is to keep this Brit core that we've got together again, and it's paying dividends, right? Headley, Clem, V, Feds, they're all involved in GB right now. It's good for them and it's good for the club, right?
Yeah, I mean they've been massive for us. They've been together, it seems like, for ages now, and you just see them getting better and better every year. And I think we're already seeing. I mean, I know of a few of our guys have been contacted by other teams, and they're getting to that point now. They're getting older now and more experience and better quality, and they're making names for themselves. So, I think for the first time this off season, we're battling some other clubs to hold on to some of these guys, and we'll see. We're going to try our best to keep them together. They've obviously been a big part of our team and our group the last few seasons, and we'd like to keep that in place as long as we can. But you know what, you got to respect guys. The time will come where some of these guys will move on. As they get older and they play more minutes and they get they add to their quality. They're obviously naturally going to demand more money and more compensation for it. So, we do our best to hold on to them, but obviously we've got to balance budgets and all that and see what we can do to build around them as well.
And, a team isn't just comprised of one guy. If you lose any of that core group, British group, you've kept your options open in terms of some of the younger guys that are trying to break through. Sam Russell, for it being the big example, you were able to keep his services for the majority of that two-way split with the NIHL there towards the end of the year. Guys like Austin Mitchell-King as well, another local boy that are right on the cusp. So, someone moving on from the Coventry Blaze out of that group is a spot that you've got guys that can jump up and fill.
Yeah, and certainly that time's going to come. whether it's this season, next season, it's going to come at some point. And will they replace them like for like? No, but maybe over time they end up doing that. And I mean, you've seen how far, Clem has come and Feds has come. And I mean, the last 2 seasons, I think V has played some of his best hockey. And, this year he was asked to play a bigger role due to some holes that we had, and, play in the middle a lot more and play up in our top 6 a lot more than anticipated. And, I think, through that, I mean, V's had 2 really good years, and, you combine the last 2 years, I think he's a top 5 Brit scorer in the last 2 seasons combined. So, you know what? Like I said, the time's going to come, whether it's this year or next, but, we're certainly doing our best to keep these guys in place.
For sure. And in terms of overall signing news, I guess we'll start to hear about that in the next week or next few days even.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We know our fan base will be antsy. I know with season tickets, it would have been ideal to get a lot of guys out and stuff. But like I said earlier, I mean, it was such it felt like a long year, physically, mentally, in every aspect. So I think the player coach interviews, exit interviews were a little bit shorter this year, a little bit, and maybe not as pushy. And as I mentioned earlier as well, like, just about decompressing, getting away, and having time to think about the season and kind of reflect, and then obviously look forward. So like I said, I've been in touch with most of the players in some form or fashion, and obviously that'll intensify as the weeks go on.
For sure. So I think we're probably at a relatively good point to kind of end this catch up now. Kind of, we'll keep our eyes on coventry-blaze.co.uk for the latest. But Danny, what's your final message to the fans as we pull the curtain down on this season?
Final message to the fans. I think what the club wants to do is, I think one thing is not only get better on the ice but off the ice. I think the days before COVID, or even a little bit before that, and I don't want to sit here and blame everything on COVID. I think we've had less presence in the community. I think we've got to get back out there and really kind of put our name back out in the community. Through player events and so forth. I just remember back when I played here as a player. I mean, we seem to be in that city center, week in, week out, doing autographs, doing, promotions, things like that. And we want to do that. We're trying to, I think one thing as well, obviously, was frustrating, probably more so for the fans than anybody else, was the lack of engagement with the players as well. That's something we're going to look to increase next season and get back to normal, and even more so than the past, and create that bond between players and fans. And we know how much that affects the crowds and and the support. So I remember there was, obviously towards the end of the year when restrictions kind of lifted, we managed to get some events in, and we're talking about February, March, and a lot of the fans barely couldn't even recognize which player was who. And there's something to say about that, especially at this level and in this country. I think that engagement with the fans is hugely important for a club our size, and we have to have that connection has to be there. You know what? And we're just going to look to push on. Obviously 1920 was a fantastic season that was unfortunately cut short. I think at the time it would have been our best regular season in over a decade. And you know what, we've seen glimpses of that this year, but not enough. And you know what, I've got to make sure that we're better in those areas, and try to find more consistency. And one thing I'd like to stress in my recruiting this off season is we're going to look to be a little bit tougher to play against next year, and whether that's through speed on both sides of the puck, and a little bit more grittiness, and maybe a little bit more size as well if we can. But obviously, you start combining all those 3 things, budgets start coming into play, and so you got to pick maybe 1 out of the 3 or 2 out of the 3. So, but no, those are things that we're looking at this year on the ice, and we really want to get excited for next year and improve in a lot of areas on and off the ice.
Thank you, Danny. Stu, that's it from me. Anything you wanted to add here before we go?
No, that's all good. Just thank Danny for his time. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me, and thank you guys as well, for all your help. All the volunteers, everyone, the supporters, the fans, certainly our players and staff. You know, it was a long season, but you know, let's get ramped up for next season.
Yeah, we'll try and do these little podcasts over the summer when we get some new guys, returning guys or whatnot. I think one of the positives that COVID taught us was that this works. It's a really easy and quick way to get content out there. And Stu and I don't mind doing it. It's a guilty pleasure.
I know. I think you enjoy it more than Stu, though, Ed.
Probably.
That's what the energy tells me, anyway.
He's just way more level-headed than I am, Danny, as you know.
I've got 2 kids and he doesn't. At 9:30 in the evening, the energy levels are pretty much gone, as you well know as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys, and thank you everybody for staying tuned and engaging with Blaze TV throughout the season. And we look forward to speaking to you throughout the summer. So from me, from Stu, from Danny, from everybody at the Blaze, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe.